suppose you can see by my miserable looking face that I'm not very happy with the outcomes of today. I'm live now. Good evening, WTU. Phil Monk here. Yeah, long couple of days. I just thought I'd talk about this ITV. Rest assured, a lot more was said in that room between the 4 dedicated activists that were there. And we were severely edited. I mean, we were told we were going to have 3 minutes, so we anticipated being edited. Good evening, Sarah. Hope you're well. Karen and Lee, hope you're all okay, guys. And you, Margie. Feel free to ask a question. I'm going to ask Lou to try and monitor and ask me the questions. God, yeah, that must be on somewhere, though. So, yeah, we spoke very openly, honestly, and frankly with the interviewers, and I have to say the interviewers were both seem very reasonable, fair women, and I don't think, obviously it's the editors that control what goes out on the telly. I didn't bother recording the 10 o'clock episode again for anyone that didn't catch it. It was exactly the same as the 6:30 p.m. episode. Severely edited is a way to describe it. I feel for Callie, I feel for JJ, I feel for Luzita and for Ace, as well as myself, because it was a long way to travel for just maybe a sentence. We were told 3 minutes, and we didn't know that most of that would be filled with other aspects of the cannabis reform with previous articles of news that had been on. So it was a bit disappointing we didn't get the full 3 minutes to have our say. I don't know, needless to say, a lot of unhappy people today. I mean, we've been unhappy for the last few weeks anyway, because we all know what was going to happen, but I suppose now it's after the 1st of November and it's actually happening, and we're getting these official letters like, you know, I've got this one here, which is from the Faculty of Pain Medicine of the Royal College of Anaesthetists. This is the faculty position statement on the menoids in pain medicine. Sorry, my foot's just hurting. If you see me start wriggling about, just ignore it. I try my best to, but don't worry, because I won't get a prescription for that. It turns out all these years campaigning, it's nothing compared to some. Yeah, chronic pain's not on there after all that. So we had 3 conditions, wasn't it? Nausea from chemotherapy, some type of epilepsy, and MS. Well, Sativex has been available for 12 years, so I don't see why that constitutes as news. So what I've got here, what I've been planning to do all day, but it's been half term, so I've not had a chance, is to kind of go through a few bits of things. What I've got is, like I said, I've got the pain faculty. I've got the Department of Health and Social Care letter that they've sent out to doctors. I know, you know, not everyone likes to read through all these big texts, so I was thinking I might just skim through a few bits that jumped out at me. Good evening, Alistair. I hope you're all right, and Jane Wellington too. In fact, should I mention names? Because I was intending on putting this on bloody YouTube. Shit. That's an issue, actually. I shouldn't mention your names because some of you might not want your names to go out on YouTube, so I'm not going to mention names, and I'll try and edit the beginning a bit, maybe. Oh, bugger. Didn't think about that. I also have this article that I saw someone shared to me. It was a CNN article. I printed it off, but there's no fancy picture, but I'll read it out to you. You may have seen it. Britain welcomes the global cannabis revolution. So I'd like to start with that one, if you don't mind. I'm not going to read through it all because it's several pages long, and you might just get fed up of listening to me read. But I've just, a few bits jumped at me. I mean, it is quite thick, this one. The British government has added cannabis to the patients on the National Health Service because it was removed from the pharmacopoeia originally. So if it was a correct statement, it has returned cannabis, or in fact cannabis-derived products more specifically. So patients can be prescribed cannabis, medicinal cannabis, by specialist doctors. The Home Office has declared. In fact, it's like they're lying to the whole world. And maybe I should read this out to you in case you haven't read it. It's like the government or someone is lying to the whole world and making them think something completely different is happening to what is actually happening in our real lives. Sorry about the lighting, by the way. So we know about campaigners. The new law, listen to this, right? You just consider what you've just seen on ITN News, 10 o'clock and 6:30 p.m. We had 3 stated conditions. It states here, CNN, and they've had this from the Home Office, the new law will not limit the types of conditions that can be considered for treatment. The Home Office statement reads, instead, doctors must make decisions on prescribing cannabis-based products for medicinal use on a case-by-case basis, and only when the patient has an unmet clinical need that cannot be met by licensed products. In other words, pharma first, yeah. In a nutshell, pharma first. I mean, basically the stuff that we're trying to avoid, the stuff that we risk being put in prison for, they're going to try and make us and other people take before they'll consider giving them a cannabis-derived product. Personally, I take issue with that because I've been refusing gabapentin and pregabalin for 4 years now because I've seen directly what they do. I've suffered a brain hemorrhage from beta blockers, a mini stroke scare from citalopram, a cancer, bowel and bladder cancer scare from tramadol, and a liver cancer scare from Zomorph and Omeprazole. So licensed approved MHRA drugs have nearly killed me 4 times now. It was traumatizing for me, and it was traumatizing for my wife and children that had to witness that. And I don't wish for myself ever to have to go through that again because of pharmaceutical drugs. I don't want anyone else to have to go through it either. They should have the choice, really. So, that statement alone, apart from the fact it's now altered, this was published the 1st of November. This is today in America. So, the global cannabis revolution lands in the UK. Yeah, really. So, it seems that they're telling the world that there's no conditions, cannabis is going to be available. In fact, it goes on. Psychiatrist and government advisor, Dr. Derek Tracy, I don't know about this gentleman yet, highlighted pain, multiple sclerosis and epilepsy as obvious early candidates for treatment with cannabis. Obviously, when you have a statement like obvious early candidate, the implication is that there's going to be lots of late candidates. That means there's going to be a lot of people left suffering, left in pain, left risking criminalization because they choose cannabis instead of pharma drugs that most likely have given them a shed load of side effects that they're trying to avoid. In fact, trying to avoid them so much that they risk prison for. Just let that sink in, folks, please. The largest step from the legislative point of view has been taken, Tracy said. What you might see is some finessing of the law in terms of specific compounds helpful or particularly toxic. Does anybody know of a compound in cannabis that's toxic? Anybody? I don't believe, in all the literature I've read, believe me, that's quite extensive. I'm sure Dr. Derek Tracy has too, but cannabis is non-toxic. So which particularly toxic compounds are you referring to? So we need to look into that, because that to me is misinformation. Now this doctor, Dr. Derek Tracy, now I'm not a doctor, right? If I know cannabis is non-toxic and doesn't have toxic compounds because I've read basic literature, this doctor should know that, and they have a responsibility and a duty of care to the public to not misinform them. So we really need to pursue this. So make a note of that one, that shall be pursued. Sorry, feel free if I go on to tell me to shut up through someone else. So it talks about how part of it looking at harms of drugs and part of it looking at the health. So I'm not going to go into that. So many users still turn to illegal means such as growing their own cannabis. Now this is actually talking about in Germany, where they've legalized medicinal cannabis. You really want to be careful what you wish for, folks. There's one thing you want to be wishing for, and that is decriminalization, not legalization, because legalization just means more laws to batter you with. So in Germany, they did it in 2017, but again, doctors are reluctant to prescribe, same as what we've got happening in the UK. And also they've got supply shortfalls. An easy remedy to that is allow those that wish to grow their own. Obviously, those that don't wish, we'll let them go to the pharmacy. So doctors need to be made more sensitive towards the law in Germany, and they need to have more conferences for doctors, many of which have prejudices against cannabis being used as a medicine or have not so far been involved with this topic. So doctors are prejudiced against cannabis, and we're seeing that in England already and in Wales, where they're saying, well, all I've heard is bad stuff, there's not enough science, so no, I'm not going to prescribe that. So they're prejudiced against this cannabis, and they won't listen to the patient, in fact, that is the expert in this instant, because the expert, the person truly responsible for anyone's health is the individual. I'm responsible for my health. No clinician, no politician, no GP. I am responsible for my health. You're responsible for yours. So they should listen to your knowledge here, because you actually know more than them if you're already a cannabis practitioner or therapeutic consumer. So they say that they don't think anywhere has got it right. Not Canada, not England. Something says here, again, I'm sorry, it's really starting to grate on me right now. I'm sure I might get some hate for this. Right? It says here, I want my baby to be active and happy. Yeah? Right? All I've seen on the news, and you know, I've got members of my group, you might even be watching me, I know you've got young children, right? I've also got members in my group, and they've got adults that used to be your young children, right? And no one seems to give a fuck about them, and that is really hurting me. So I want to stretch that to we, the undersigned. We want to be active and happy regardless of how old we are, whether we're 4 years old, 14 years old, or 40 years old like I am in a couple of weeks. It's irrelevant how many years you've been on the planet, right? And it's really great, isn't it? Because it's all sick kids this and sick kids that. What about sick teenagers? What about sick middle agers? What about sick pensioners, right? It's got to get more now to about all the people, all the people. Sorry, I'm getting angry. I'm going to take a breath. I have it getting angry. I get a bit passionate because, you know, you're hurting. I see my community members, and I've got friends out there that I've grown to love and feel like family, more so than my actual flesh and blood actually have turned me back on me in my cannabis campaign. So, you know, it hurts me knowing that you're hurting in pain and that you're being busted and criminalised. Anyway, what else was I going to show you? Yes, something that Mike Barnes did say, although he did say something a bit controversial about a possible dangerous cannabinoid. Again, I don't know what they're intimating about a dangerous cannabinoid. This system has a big role to play in lots of bodily functions, including epilepsy, Barnes said. What the plants are doing is interacting with our own systems, supplementing it and putting it right. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's probably because cannabis maintains homeostasis. And that is probably because cannabis is a bit more like a food supplement, in fact, than a medicine. So cannabis should be available everywhere as a food item. And for those that want to get high on it, it should be available in licensed premises as a licensed recreational drug. So the reason it puts everyone's systems right is because it maintains homeostasis, which if you're not sure what that is, basically it's like balance in your body at a cellular level. So we've got all these different systems in our bodies. Cannabis, or all the different cannabinoids, they regulate homeostasis. So really, we've got a government denying us access to a food source and a recreational drug that is both safer and more beneficial for our health. So we need to start fighting for our human rights to access that. I'm just going to flick through the rest of that page because there was something that was really interesting, and this is going to be the best bit. Oh, yeah. So, the UK Medical and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, the ones that approve those 4 drugs that I listed earlier that nearly killed me 4 times, that many of you in my community have also suffered horrendous side effects from, and also avoid taking with cannabis, natural herbal cannabis, either from the street or grown in your own house, whichever one you happen to use. You know, it's either one of those terrible cannabises that they keep referring to on the news, rather than medicinal cannabis. Yeah, we've not been treating ourselves with medicinal cannabis for all these years. We haven't been risking prison. It wasn't therapeutic. All that time we've been using it, it still wasn't therapeutic. Only their cannabis is therapeutic. Bullshit. Anyway, so they're saying here that the MHRA will make the full plant or flower available on prescription, not merely extracts in pill or liquid form. Bedrocan, Netherlands, which produces pharmaceutical-grade cannabis commissioned by the Dutch government, will become the first to market cannabis in the UK. So they, in America, believe that cannabis can be prescribed by specialists, which, it can be prescribed for any condition, and flowers will be available, not only pills in liquid form. Now, that isn't exactly what we're being told over here in England and Wales. We're being told that no one's going to get it, basically, because there's not enough knowledge, there's not enough research, they don't know enough, and it won't be available in flower because a flower isn't a proper medicine. No, it's not a proper medicine, folks. We've said it all along. It's a herbal health remedy. Sativex might be a medicine because it's got a load of side effects and stuff. Epidiolex also has, it's got even death listed on its side effects, I believe I read the other day. Medicine with death as a side effect doesn't sound too medicinal to me personally. So I'm going to stick with my herbal health remedy, right, that's caused me no harm in 23 years. The only harm it could ever cause me is the police coming through my door and arresting me for it. So, you know, I'm not saying it can't harm anybody. In fact, Harvard University recently showed 4,000 adolescents need to be criminalized and prosecuted to prevent one adolescent from having a potential mental episode because of cannabis. So just let those figures figure in as well, because your teenage kids are out on those streets as well as mine, and none of us know what they get up to, and they say, yes, I'll make good choices, mum and dad, like we used to say to our mum and dad, yeah, I'll be good, you know. So we shouldn't have any criminal sanctions for cannabis, really, should we? Because it's destroying lives. So CNN, America, think, yeah, happy days. England's got the most revolutionary medicinal cannabis laws available. Anyway, what the government say, they've announced plans to reschedule certain cannabis-based products for medicinal use. They'll be moving cannabis-based products for medicinal use to Schedule 2, and that will mean those cannabis-based products can be prescribed medicinally, and this is the bit that breaks my bones again, is an unmet clinical need. So again, it all comes down to pharmaceutical drugs are going to be pushed first. Now they can bang on avoiding taking with street cannabis are licensed. So that license doesn't guarantee safety. It doesn't mean anything. It just means it's been put through some trials. It does not guarantee safety. So in fact, it was the annex that was most important. Prescribers are expected to only prescribe a product where they are certain its content and quality, which that sounds quite sensible, really. But with cannabis, you can never be certain of its certain qualities, like its cannabinoid profile. So it's difficult to be sure of certain qualities. So that's, you know, it's the letter of the law with the government. That's where they get you, is the letter of the law. And it's, how can you be certain of its content and its quality? You can never be certain of its everything, I don't think. Maybe you can with testing. So cannabis-based products, oh yeah, this is interesting. This is quite an interesting development, this is. I got my advanced driving test recently, by the way. 1 point off at first, just dropped 1 point. Cannabis-based products for medicinal use may impair a person's ability to drive safely, and patients should be advised of the risks. Further information is available on the Department for Transport website here, and it wasn't very easy to find, I tell you. So it wasn't there at all. There is a hyperlink on the page, which includes information on statutory medical defence. Now, bear in mind, just a few months ago, driving cannabis increases your chances to have a crash by 4 times. That's what it was saying just a few weeks ago. But now it might just impair a person's ability to drive. Well, that's actually quite a... I'm impressed by that, because it can impair a person's ability to drive, just like tiredness can, or nicotine withdrawals, that can also impair a person's ability to drive. So the important thing here, actually, the government might have actually noticed it themselves, or they haven't got around to doing it because they're kind of inept. They need an impairment test, a roadside impairment test. That's what's needed, not some arbitrary saliva test that registers some tiny amount of THC. We actually need a roadside impairment test to see if a person is safe to drive. As an advanced driving practitioner, I do believe in road safety. No one should drive whilst impaired under any circumstances, whether it's cannabis, tiredness, caffeine, nicotine, or whatever. So, we expect clinicians in non-NHS settings to follow similar standards and equivalent process for prescribing unlicensed special medicines. In other words, the private clinics are expected to follow the same rules. Whether they do or not, I don't know, because it's all private. Bear with me while I find the next bit. I hope this is making some sort of sense to you. Yeah, what I'll do is what do you mean by the information? The pages? Yeah. The links? Yeah, I can do that. So yeah, pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance. This is finishing. This is from Professor Dame Sally. I have written to her, but I suppose she didn't want to reply to me because I'm just a little old Phil Monk. But I think I sent her some valid information, so I might have to just contact her again. Anyway, if cannabis-based products for medicinal use are prescribed, then treating clinicians should maintain measures to support patient effectiveness of cannabis-based products for medicinal use. This will include reporting all suspected adverse reactions to the product, both licensed and unlicensed, to the MHRA's Yellow Card scheme, which basically means pharmacovigilance. They're going to really keep an eye on you. They're going to monitor people. So anyone that is happens to be severely sick enough and unfortunate enough to be that poorly, they might then be granted a cannabis-based prescription. It's going to be monitored thoroughly, which is interesting because I wasn't aware that you could actually report these side effects. So I was nearly killed 4 times. I didn't know that. Why did anyone not tell me? Why did anyone not monitor me when I was on these severely addictive opiate drugs that really messed up my body and nasty things? Why did no one monitor me with those and no one tell me there was a yellow card scheme that I could actually record these side effects to? Fancy that. I never knew that. They're treating cannabis as though it is more dangerous than the shit they peddle as it is. Gabapentin and pregabalin, no disrespect to anyone that takes this drug for themselves, so it's never a reflection upon them, but on the substance itself and what it does to a human. They've been reduced to a Class C drug. Bear in mind, cannabis is still Class B. Schedule 1 in herbal form will be Schedule 2 in their prescribed products. So that means, I don't know if you know about it, but gabapentin and pregabalin, I thought they're opiate drugs. It turns out they're not. They're anti-epileptic seizure drugs. And they do actually shut off nerve pain. I can't deny their efficacy. They really do shut off nerve pain, but individual too. And when they miss their dose within an hour, they're having witnessed that through caring for my lovely wife. There's no way I'm ever going to put that stuff in my body. And I think everyone should have a choice not to put that stuff in their body and become severely physically dependent upon this substance, that they cannot go without it without severe side effects. Now bear in mind, I can't always afford cannabis. I run out of cannabis, yeah, and I do so with a smile because I don't have those withdrawal effects. Yes, I have more pain. I do feel a little bit more grumpy, but I don't have any of those side effects. I don't have cold shakes and all that, or body aches. No, maybe some people do out there. Maybe I'm just fortunate not to have those withdrawals, but I don't believe cannabis creates those withdrawals. Some may suffer anxiety, a bit of insomnia, but nothing quite like what you get from these prescribed drugs that they've just put down to a Class C. So in an annex to that, I suppose, I'm really angry. Oh, can't express how angry I am that so many people are going to be left to suffer. And not only going to be left to suffer, they're going to be in pain. They might be fearing death. Not only that, they're going to be risking prosecution for cannabis like we always have done anyway. But now we might also be subject to some sort of prescription laws as well that might also be another stick for them to beat us with. And in all fairness, it's time to stop talking about plants and it's time to start talking about people and human rights. So I think we should talk about human rights more. In this annex to the government letter to doctors, it talks about the other varieties of cannabis products available on the internet and in health food outlets and things like that, dispensaries. It's basically talking about CBD, you know, the other cannabinoid, the good one. Sorry, I do make mockery of their bullshit. Sorry, I'm not sure if I should swear. It comes out occasionally because I'm just so angry with them because they're lying and they're killing people. You know, they're literally murdering people with their lies. I've read the reports of 1998. I know they have. I know they read Mike Barnes' report and all the other reports, so they know the truth, but they're still lying to everyone that natural herbal cannabis is bad, just so they can make these patented, marketable, profitable products and sell for vast prices. When we all know that cannabis is relatively cheap in order to grow. And in fact, compared to Sativex, it's bloody cheap to buy on the street as well. Skunk and Sativex made of the same thing. So it says here, in the opinion of the Home Office, any CBD product that contains any amount of THC will be a controlled drug. Did you get that? Let me read that to you again. Sorry, I know this is daft, right, but every word is significantly important when you're dealing with these people. When I mean these people, I mean the Home Office, the ones that dictate our lives to us on pain of criminalisation. So they say, in the opinion of the Home Office, they can shove their opinion. In the opinion of the Home Office, see its guidance note here. Can't see it, sorry. Any CBD product that contains any amount of THC, I mean, that will be a controlled drug within the meaning of the 1971 Misuse of Drugs Act, except under very specific conditions. Therefore, using cannabis-based products that do not meet the official definition of a cannabis-based product for medicinal use, such as homegrown or street cannabis, for therapeutic benefit is illegal and potentially dangerous, and patients should be reminded of this. The evidence that cannabis and some of its constituents can be addictive and harmful is well known and is not disputed by recent science. So again, I'd like to know which of its constituents can be addictive and harmful. I mean, maybe I have missed those papers. Everything could be harmful, I suppose, but just because there is this minuscule potential harm for a minuscule minority of people, does that mean that the rest of us should be prosecuted and criminalised and basically have our lives ruined by this law? That's interesting as well. I've got to have a look at the guidance. Any CBD product with any amount of THC. So that bud that I bought the other day and 0.2 THC, does that mean that now falls under the Misuse of Drugs Act? Same as when you buy your oil and it's got 0.2 THC in it. That's concerning because suddenly CBD could fall under the Misuse of Drugs Act and suddenly people can't use CBD products as freely as they have been. That needs looking into too. And I want to know, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence for these, this non-disputed evidence? The health harms of smoking are clear. Therefore, the regulations prohibit both the prescription and self-administration of a cannabis-based product for medicinal use in humans by way of smoking other than for research purposes. And patients should be informed of the health risks associated with such use. I guess prosecution is probably the most severe health risk of that. I'm sure I was sat behind Dr. Frank in the Houses of Parliament on June the 26th at the Cannabis is Medicine conference, where I actually said, no, sorry, cannabis is nutrition. It should be used as a food to maintain homeostasis, and then you wouldn't have the deficiencies that show up as diseases, and then you wouldn't need cannabis as a medicine. But he's a doctor, I'm just Phil Monk. So anyway, smoking cannabis, Dr. Frank himself said there's no evidence of smoking cannabis causing lung cancer. Or I'm not sure if he mentioned COPD, but definitely nothing for lung cancer. He was adamant about that, and I don't want to argue with the man, to be fair, apart from the fact that cannabis is nutrition, not medicine. Smoking can't be good for you, obviously, so they can't endorse smoking. But also, something worth knowing, that smoking cannabis itself, consuming cannabis itself, wasn't prohibited. So it might now be, whereas cannabis wasn't prohibited previously under the Misuse of Drugs Act, it might now be prohibited under prescription laws. It also gives the coppers a way. No one can say, oh yeah, but this is medicinal, which it probably bloody well is medicinal, because all use is medicinal because it maintains homeostasis. Apart from that tiny minuscule percentage of people that develop a problem. So, you know, they can't endorse smoking. I get that, but you don't have to prosecute someone if they choose to smoke. Yeah? My lungs. You don't prosecute someone for smoking that poisonous stuff called tobacco that literally murders and kills millions of people, whereas smoking cannabis doesn't do that. In fact, they're showing that the psychosis from cannabis is probably linked to the tobacco that we're wrapping it with, because it's so expensive we can't afford enough to smoke it pure. You know, if we didn't have prohibition, cannabis prices would plummet. It wouldn't be more expensive than gold like it has been for decades, and we could actually afford to smoke cannabis pure. That's my dream, to be fair, you know, is not to have to smoke it with that poisonous stuff, tobacco. I know I can hear certain members saying to me, you don't need tobacco with it, Phil. I find because of my finances, actually, I do. And I haven't yet been able to find a way not to. Good evening, everyone there. Ashley Harrison, Darren Taylor, Rocky, good evening, sir. I can't see the rest. They've all phased out, sorry, but hello, everyone. I hope I'm not rambling. I hope you're getting something from this. So basically, they're going to prosecute you if you smoke cannabis. Because they can't endorse it, because smoking, the harms of smoking are clear. Now, have we had these tests? You know, what assumption are they making? The harms of smoking tobacco, they're very clear. We have that evidence, we have that research. Do we have the research that smoking pure cannabis is harmful? Until they have that research, should they be able to prosecute us on that basis? Is that not reasonable doubt that these harms of smoking cannabis don't exist, therefore we shouldn't be prosecuted in order to protect us from these potential harms? How they use protection to protect us, prosecution to protect us, has always baffled me. It does go on to waffle about Sativex and how they quite fraudulently managed to scam their way into Schedule 4 by not using the word cannabis in its title. Obviously, they didn't use that terminology. I've rephrased that for you just for speed. But yeah, basically, they used a bit of semantic trickery so that skunk could stay in Schedule 1 and skunk Sativex spray could be conveniently moved to Schedule 4 to be sold around the world, I do believe, but not prescribed very much in the UK, along the lines of Epidiolex, I do believe. So in other words, nothing more than a load of crap. Nothing more than empty promises to mislead and fool the masses, basically. You know, I've had phone calls from people that aren't in the cannabis community saying, oh, well done, Phil, you've done it. Well, I haven't done anything, to be honest, apart from write a load of old letters to people. Most of them have ignored me. Some have been pleasant enough to reply. But, you know, ultimately, what have I achieved? I was on the news today. Well, what did that achieve? They just edited out everything I had to say to just one tiny little sentence. In fact, you should have heard the beginning of that sentence, right? I hope they send that to the intended recipient, which was the Home Secretary, because I really want him to hear that message. In fact, maybe I'll say it now in case Channel 4, ITV never have the courage to reveal it. It wasn't a great deal, actually. It was quite simply, Dear Home Secretary, Sajid David, it's probably a bit more forceful than this because you could see how pissed off I was on my face. You've got the power under Section 7 of the Misuse of Drugs Act to decriminalise the entire cannabis community, whether they use it for therapeutic purposes, nutritional purposes, spiritual purposes, creative purposes, or industrial purposes. Whether they use it just to relax, it doesn't matter to you actually why they use it. Your job isn't to dictate to people why they use it. Yours is to perhaps protect them through a regulated market so that what they do get is as safe as it can be, which in cannabis's case is fairly safe anyway, to be fair. So, you know, under Section 7 of the Misuse of Drugs Act, decriminalisers. We are not criminals. Yes, we break your broken law. It was always broken from the beginning. Excuse me, fellas. I'm doing a live feed, right? This could go out to the whole world, and you're whispering away in the background. That's my 14-year-old son, by the way. You can always rely on a 14-year-old son, can't you? Cheers, son. You're grounded. Sorry. You're grounded. Go back to your bedroom. You've been naughty anyway. You know, so decriminalisers. We are not criminals. We break a broken law that was brought out in 1928 based on, well, I actually learned recently, I thought it was based on some things from Turkey where they said it drove people mad. But it turns out there was a president that came over from America, and he was some religious zealot, and he thought that alcohol should be banned. He was a bit of a Puritan, and he thought alcohol should be banned. Sure enough, they had prohibition afterwards, so he probably did that. But all of Europe said, whoa, easy on, you can't ban alcohol, are you mad? Everyone loves alcohol. Oh, no one really bothers with those other drugs, so you can ban that if you like. And that's why it was banned. I mean, since then it's been kept under because of political reasons. And even now it's suppressed for political and profit reasons. So how do I feel? Furious. Does anyone want to come and have a protest outside the Home Office and show them how furious we are? You know, I've got 2 sticks. I want to go and shake one of them at the Home Office while I hold myself up with the other stick. They're letting the nation down. They've done it since 1998, since Philip Robson's report, The Therapeutic Aspects of Cannabis, that was published in 2001. You know, they were told how remarkably therapeutic cannabis is. They were told that they shouldn't be prosecuting people that choose to assuage their symptoms with natural herbal cannabis. They then went on to show a huge array of, you know, background history of conditions benefited from cannabis. They also said, I'm sure in there, that time was needed to develop like marketable, profitable products. And the government at the time, and every other government since, suppressed the first finding that cannabis is remarkably therapeutic. They suppressed that, and they have actually pushed the message for 20 years now, non-stop. Cannabis is bad. Cannabis will drive you mad. My kids came home and told me cannabis will cause cancer. How ironic is that, eh? So it seems that they've been misinforming the public for 20 years. And it turns out that the person that wrote that report, Philip Robson, that I already mentioned, he went on to become the medical director at GW Pharmaceuticals. Now, I don't want to say anything bad about them, you know, wonderful scientists. I hope millions of people around the world benefit from your medicine, your cannabis-derived product, rather. But it's not looking likely in this country, and from what I know of it, it's to health. So you should have just stuck with what herbalists do rather than going to pharmacotherapy and trying to make novel patentable products. And that's where they've gone wrong, see, because they just want to make a novel patentable product that only they have rights to, so that they can coin it in, basically. They want to coin it in off you being sick. Which obviously our Prime Minister and her husband, our Drug Minister, and everyone else, oh, thank you very much, Tony. Everyone else is obviously profiting from vastly. So even if they don't release it in this country, it's FDA approved soon, or now Epidiolex and Sativex. That's going to go around the world, and they're still going to coin it in. When I mean they, I mean our Prime Minister and her husband, and her Drugs Minister and her husband. And I don't know which other ministers, actually, because, you know, Labour's very quiet here. I reckon there must be some of those who've got fingers in pies too. So it's looking all a bit dodgy to me where I'm sitting, and they want to put little old people like us that are making a simple health choice. Simple health choice. Simple health choice. We have one plant that maintains homeostasis. Yeah, it's a super nutrient, maintains homeostasis. Humans have used it for thousands of years, and we've got synthetic pharmaceutical stuff that fucks us up. What are you going to choose? Now, we're going to choose, if we in the knowledge, There's stuff that nature provided. Some would say God provided. Genesis 1:29, yeah? God gave all seed-bearing plants to mankind for food and nutrition. Well, I choose that. If you choose cannabis, or if you just choose freedom, in fact, come and join We the Undersigned, because we could do with your support right now, because we could do a huge push and try and get the decriminalisation of cannabis across the board. It should be removed from the Misuse of Drugs Act, because it is a completely inapt piece of legislation. So, I don't know, I'm open to ideas. Can I write any more letters? I'll be writing some letters, I suppose. Excuse me. I'm actually killing time now. 40 minutes, I've noticed. I'm going to go try and run to 42 minutes just for good times. Saw me on the news today. Cheers, Sam. I wish they'd shown all of us on the news as much as what we'd spoken. Had a lot more to say than what they were willing to show, and that's most unfortunate. The Welsh news, and where the young Gymraeg. Who'd have thought that? Me on the where the young Gymraeg. Wow, fancy that. I never anticipated any of this. I started WTU just by a freak accident. In fact, you know that anger you saw on the telly earlier? It was that anger that made me do WTU, because I was angry about little Alfie and little Billy. They were both in the news heavy in March, part of that campaign going on. And that's what pushed me to want to write to every human rights solicitor. So also, if you're a human rights solicitor and you think, you know, this is inhumane what this government's doing to us, I want to hear from you urgently. I've got 3,000 odd members that we all want to put into a kitty and pay you to take this government to court. We reckon we've got plenty of evidence of their lies and corruption, and we want to take them to court. So if you feel like you want to take that on and actually shatter this corruption of cannabis prohibition, then please give me a call, because I'd really like to hear from you. Right, good evening, folks. Stay high. There's the end button. Any white lights, please? Oh yeah, I do smoke, by the way, because it's a really effective way to get fast pain relief. So because I've sat here for this amount of time, almost all my what do you call it, spine seized it. I would say it's CBD, but I don't know actually. I can't remember. I might have got the packets mixed up. Does it ever end, or does it just sit there?